Good morning. Was Bryan factually at Wawawai Park? And at a potential trial setting, would he have to take the stand in defense of his own alibi?
Bryan Kohberger would have to take the stand to establish his alibi. That will be a cold day in hell because he will be torn apart on cross-examination.
Or, as we now know, will his alibi be location-based and backed by cell data and expert testimony?
The defendant states that he was driving around during the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, which we already knew, and drove, here's the additional part, throughout the area of Pullman, Washington, west of Moscow, Idaho, including Wawawai Park. With the exception of the reference to Wawawai Park, which is new, the defendant is offering nothing new to his initial alibi that he was simply driving around during the morning hours of November 13th, 2022.
This accidental? Is it intentional? Is there other things at play here that's changing this narrative to where there's clearly some manipulation of the original data?
If I'm the defense and I'm reading this, I'm like, man, we've really got the state in a blender. Like their mind is twisted in a pretzel. We added something and they're complaining we didn't add enough. They keep complaining back to our old alibi. What are they so worried about? What are they so worried about?
From what I have reviewed, the FBI mapped 6% of the data that came in. Mallory's testimony and what I've seen through here, he was up to about 18%.
Are the prosecutors now worried because it's possible they arrested the wrong guy?
At the time of the homicides, because the defendant's cell phone stopped reporting to the cellular network before the homicides and continued to not report until after the homicide. So he's saying this ain't good enough because the cell phone evidence is not evidence, it's a lack of evidence.
Important to note here, if you recall in the beginning, the narrative seemed to be more that Bryan had turned his phone off to conceal his location. But here, the state specifically uses the verbiage, had stopped reporting to the network.
Not that the cell phone was turned off necessarily. He doesn't say that here. I've heard a lot of reports and people saying that. But instead, the cell phone was not reporting for a certain chunk of time. Was he driving in areas where the cell phone doesn't report? Is he going to have somebody testify that Wawawai, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, that park has areas where the cell phone doesn't report?
A simple Google search of this park will yield plenty of reviews where users clearly state it's a canyon, there is no cell signal at this park. But you know I love my receipts, so you're welcome.
Is that what his expert's going to testify to? Maybe. If you can prove he wasn't out driving at night during that time, prove it. Your cell phone expert, any witnesses to the scene of the crime, any witnesses that saw him, video evidence that you have him driving around this area with the car.
You just gotta trust me, bro. It's a white Elantra.
Or where you plotted the points versus being in rural areas far away from the crime scene. Provide it.
Prove it. So prove it. So prove it. So prove it.
Prove it.